Hello and welcome to the Literary Lair. It's just about, or rather just past, the 56th anniversary of Doctor Who, so I figured that this would be a good time to check out something Doctor Who related before year's end. A few Januaries ago, I took a look at the Big Finish Doctor Who Unbound series, or rather, my first exposure to the series, Sympathy for the Devil, which featured David Warner in the role of the Doctor, a portrayal that I absolutely love, landing on an Earth that didn't have his help during the unit years and only had the Brigadier to take charge. Despite his skill, the Brig was out of his depth, and the world pretty much went to hell in a handbasket, getting its ass kicked by every major threat that the Third Doctor faced down, and the Brigadier was a discredited crackpot. At the time of that video, I had only ever listened to the ones featuring David Warner, the two ones starring him, and then his various appearances since in the Bernice Summerfield line, all of which are phenomenal, but in the interim I've listened to every single one of the originals, save for Exile, which I have not heard kind things about, and decided to skip. Maybe it's good, maybe it isn't, but the premise didn't catch my attention and public opinion swayed me away from it. However, for the most part, I was extremely pleased with all the other ones I listened to. If I had to pick a favorite, I think it would probably be Full Fathom 5. But that reminded me that it's been a while since I listened to the two David Warner-Nicholas Courtney ones, and while David Warner's been making yearly appearances with Benny Summerfield for a few years now, I figured it was finally high time to jump back and see where the Doctor and Alistair got off to after they left Hong Kong. And in classic Doctor Who fashion, it involves an old enemy rearing their ugly eye stalks. Set your TARDIS controls and plug in your headphones, cause this is Masters of War.
Alright, let's do this!
Oh, happy spaceman. What are you doing here?
Dude, you're talking about Masters of War, the classic Bob Dylan song? Come on, man, you already did Sympathy for the Devil without me, but I'm not missing this.
Out of curiosity, do you actually watch my videos?
No? Why?
Because I'm reviewing a Doctor Who audio drama that just happens to be named Masters of War, just like the previous one happened to be named Sympathy for the Devil.
So there are no actual songs to be reviewed? You mean I went to all this trouble for nothing?
Well, if you're so dead set on doing a crossover today, I can put this one on the back burner and we can take a look at Doctor in Distress. How's that sound?
Depends. What's Doctor in Distress?
Iota, play the song. That never gets old. Just roll the theme song before another music reviewer shows up. One thing that I regret about the first review is that I didn't look at the cover. Yes, it's a CD, but I think it deserved a look-see, so let's do that now. All the original Unbound featured covers with half the face of the Doctor and half of their companion, so that one featured David Warner on the left and Nicholas Courtney on the right, with an orange vortex overlaid onto them that kinda resembles a vinyl record. I don't know what it is, but I just like that orangey color. It fits for some reason. Masters of War is much more traditional for Big Finish, featuring Warner's Doctor prominently front and center with Alistair to his right and Davros to the left, in keeping with the tradition of having Dalek stories try to hide the fact that the Daleks are around, And yet, titling the episode X of the Daleks, this one pretty much guarantees that we know going in that Davros is a main character. Much like in Remembrance of the Daleks, actually. We've still got the vinyl vortex overlaid, and behind them are 4 Daleks. We also get the title and the author's name, Eddie Robson, who has worked on scores of Doctor Who-related audio dramas and comics, including a personal favorite of mine, Time in Office, a 5th Doctor political comedy featuring Leela that I highly recommend. Anyway, let's get to the story.
Come on, Alistair, inside!
Hurry up then, close the doors.
The audio drama opens up with the Doctor and Alistair running from a tribe on an alien planet because, in a twist on the classic trope, Alistair is the one who inadvertently antagonized their deity by laughing at him, forcing a hasty retreat back to the TARDIS.
You insulted their god to his face!
If he was a god, I'm the Queen of Gibraltar.
And that's why the Doctor never brought the Brigadier on any trips longer than a single story. It'd be stuff like that every other week. The Doctor doesn't have enough time to program in their coordinates, so they're just sort of ending up wherever they end up, which happens to be a very familiar planet, not that the Doctor realizes it at first.
Some kind of city. It's cold, you might want to bring a coat.
They check around, and the Doctor remarks on a familiarity, while Alistair notices that the buildings are falling apart due to battle damage. It doesn't take long for them to realize why the streets are abandoned when they're confronted by a Dalek patrolling the streets.
Halt! You are in violation of curfew. Identify yourself and justify your presence, or you will be exterminated!
I think that answers your question pretty concisely, Alistair.
After the theme song, the Doctor and Alistair try to explain themselves and why they don't have ID. Poorly. But are saved in the nick of time by a member of the local Thal resistance, Gillen. Gillen manages to smooth things over, and they get temporary ID numbers. They're taken to Gillen's home, where the Doctor and Alistair are debriefed and told about the situation on the planet, with the Doctor obviously offering to help depose the Daleks because, well, that's sort of his thing. He is, after all,
the man that stops the monsters.
They're also introduced to Gillen's friend Nadell. What's really interesting about this, and why I didn't bring up Gillen's voice actor before when she showed up, is because both Gillen and Nadell have connections to the DC universe, as does David Warner, funnily enough, having played Ra's al Ghul in the DC animated universe. Gillen is played by Sarah Douglas, aka Ursa from Superman 2, and more recently Jinder Kal Raz on Supergirl, among many other roles, and Nadell is played by Amy Pemberton, known to Doctor Who fans as Sally Morgan, a Big Finish companion of the Seventh Doctor, but known to me and viewers of DC's Legends of Tomorrow as Gideon. And I'll be damned if Amy Pemberton isn't near unrecognizable. Maybe it's because I'm so used to her playing a computer or because the audio drama is a decade old, but I was shocked when I saw the cast list. The Doctor also explains that he was on Skaro during the events of the Daleks, aka the Great Siege, which Gillen and Nadell are incredulous about.
Is he serious? I don't know. I'll ask him. Are you serious?
At this precise moment, yes, very much so.
But beggars can't really be choosers. The Doctor and Alistair register in the city and learn more about the Dalek history of this timeline, allowing us to see what Dalek society would be like if the Time Lords didn't have the Doctor to send on that mission in Genesis of the Daleks, where Davros created the Daleks and history went on unfettered. Turns out, Davros just left Skaro. Listen, I'm not saying the Time Lords cocked it up, but later, the Daleks had left to go find Davros at an earlier point in time to the present, but came back and subjugated the Thals for reasons that will be explained later.
Why haven't I heard them mention him?
There are splinter groups out there who've given up on the search for Davros, basically renounced him. The Daleks have warned us about them.
Ah, so those must be the ones I've encountered on other worlds. That's interesting.
During the night, 2 Resistance members are confronted by the Daleks.
You are in violation of curfew. Come out of the shadows and identify yourselves!
They've seen us. Let me do the talking.
One of Gillen's associates is killed by the Daleks after being discovered out during curfew, which usually wouldn't be such a bad thing since casualties are expected fighting the Daleks. But this guy was a lead scientist who had a plan to reprogram a Dalek into a spy, but without his expertise, the tech is dead in the water. However, they have a brilliant scientist in the Doctor who's eager to help out. Meanwhile, the Daleks are preparing for an attack and begin their incubation program, which is where they round up a bunch of Thals from all the cities to convert into Daleks. One of those unlucky chosen few is Nadell, who gets taken in for conversion due to her having bipolar disorder, which makes her inferior stock, which kind of boggles my mind given that the Daleks have that desire for perfection. The Doctor and Gillen manage to capture a Dalek, and instead of the spy idea, the Doctor instead reprograms a Dalek into believing that it's Davros returned to them.
I am Davros. I am your creator. I have completed my final transition into a Dalek.
And they send that Dalek off to cause chaos, allowing for the Thals to attack with little resistance since the Daleks are fighting a war within their own ranks. During the attempt to brainwash the Dalek, Alistair had been captured, which I believe was deliberate, so that he could hitch a ride to the Dalek Citadel to find Nadell, which he does, saving all the non-converted Thals from becoming Daleks. They stay behind to destroy the conversion lab once and for all, but all factions are stopped when a third faction arrives, the Quach, who bring along a special guest.
Welcome, Chief Technician. These two creatures were attempting to destroy this laboratory.
I don't believe it!
Is that what you prevented them?
We did.
The Daleks have deviated since I was here last. But they will be restored to my original vision!
In the face of a greater enemy, the Dalek factions split, those who are still loyal to Davros and those who see the Quach as a threat, and reveal that, in fact, the Quachs were the reason that the Daleks came back to Skaro in the first place. See, Davros' original Daleks lacked pity, and so they abandoned him because he was inferior. Kids, am I right? His second batch were more subservient, but the pity created a bit of a design flaw that, in the Doctor's words,
By Dalek standards, they've been benevolent, and I wondered why.
So their subjugation of the Thals was, in fact, done in a misguided attempt to protect them from the forthcoming Quach invasion.
Our destiny is to protect the weak. The most effective means of protecting the weak is by making them work towards their own salvation.
Which is by far the most interesting thing I've ever seen done with the Daleks yet, as opposed to the usual space Nazi stuff. The Quach, invented for this story, are beings that exist on another plane of existence and require technology augmentation to exist in the normal universe. The Doctor and Alistair help the Daleks and Thals join forces, and they go for a full-on Quach assault, learning from one Quach that they capture and interrogate through humane means that the Quach had attempted to capture Skaro many years earlier.
Skaro came under attack, or all the fighting took place in space. We never saw one member of the opposing army. That was you.
And when they failed, they decided to get back at the inhabitants of the planet. Following that war, there was a giant civil war between the Thals and the Khaleds that injured Davros and led into the creation of the Daleks, the war having been believed to have been started by either the Thals or the Khaleds, with neither side taking credit. And really, when it comes to war, it doesn't much matter, does it? However, in this case it does, because it was actually the Quach who instigated it, since their main power is figuring out the perfect battle strategies to achieve their goals, and their strategy told them that they could capture Skaro easier in the future to tap into energy within the core, if they manipulated it to their whims and managed to snag Davros to work for them after he left the planet, never knowing that the people he was working for were the people who ruined his life. The Doctor, upon learning that information, decides to give Davros a chance to make a choice, and flies a Dalek saucer with Alistair to the Quach's mothership. They bust in and find Davros' lab.
You've had 3 great enemies in your life. Your own Daleks, the Thals, and who else? The aliens the Thals made you fight, who crippled you and consigned you to a secluded existence on life support. The Daleks say you often spoke of getting out into space and getting revenge on them, but you never saw them, did you? You had no clue who your enemy was.
What relevance does this have to me?
It was the Quach, Davros. The Quach crippled you and left you for dead.
Davros, who had earlier stated that he wanted to destroy Skaro because it caused him nothing but pain and sorrow, is more than happy to sacrifice himself to destroy those who ruined his life, since every good scientist puts in a secret self-destruct button into his dimensional augmentations he built for his employers. The Quachs are banished back to their reality, and the day is saved. In the end, the Daleks and the Thals agree to coexist on equal footing, and to ensure peace and tranquility, Alistair remains behind, since he's starting to get tired of the Doctor's wandering existence.
I don't know. I mean, we can't just stay here until they work things out.
Can't we?
It could take years. There's so much else to do out there, so many places to see. We could be somewhere else, helping someone else.
You could be. I don't have to.
Really? Are you sure?
Yes. You go. Do what you do. I'm not sure I can keep up with your pace anyway. Maybe it's time for me to play statesman for a while.
And given the fact that Nicholas Courtney is no longer with us, it allowed at least one Brigadier to get a proper, semi-on-screen departure from the Doctor's life.
I'd like a quiet life.
You've come to the wrong place.
Yes, I think I probably have. But a chap could spend years searching for the right place. Perhaps we should try and make this into the right place.
The Literary Lair will return, but first, a word from our sponsor. If you guys are like me, and I would guess a lot of you are, you probably do a lot of writing, whether it be posts on social media, blog posts, or heck, even scripts for videos. And few things are worse than posting something online only to realize too late that you made a spelling or contextual error, especially on platforms that don't have an edit button. Or in my case, it's realizing while editing a review together that I wrote the wrong word into the script and I didn't catch it, and it's in the middle of a sentence so I can't edit around it. To avoid situations like that, it's a good thing that today's video is brought to you by Grammarly, an intelligent writing app. Grammarly corrects hundreds of grammar, punctuation, and spelling mistakes while also catching contextual errors, improving your vocabulary, and suggesting style improvements. Grammarly is a text editor you can paste your writing into, or you can download their Chrome extension, which automatically checks your spelling on the web on whatever websites you might use. Though be forewarned, it doesn't work on every site, but it works on most. And if you want to use Grammarly, but you also like helping out your favorite creators, wink wink, you can go to getgrammarly.com/BlackScarabFilmZ, and when you download it from there, you'll be helping me out. And the best part about Grammarly is it is absolutely free. They do offer a premium service that nets you extra features, but trust me, the free version is more than enough to start, and they aren't like all those other free services that try to bully you into using the premium version by taking away features or changing stuff. I've been using it for almost a year, and it's been a great help to me. I wouldn't be doing this if I didn't believe in the service. I try to be very strict about that. I only tell you and do sponsorship deals about stuff that I use and I enjoy. And it has been paying off in spades. So go get Grammarly and improve your writing today. The link again is getgrammarly.com/BlackScarabFilmZ. Before I start, I just want to say that all the voice actors in this piece are incredible. David Warner and Nicholas Courtney are as incredible as they were in the last one. Sarah Douglas and Amy Pemberton are great as Gillen and Adele, and Terry Malloy is utterly brilliant as Davros, and a very different Davros than we've ever seen before. And I shouldn't have to praise Nick Briggs, because duh, but he was great too. I don't know what it is about David Warner's Doctor, but whoever writes him, they always give him a wham line in every audio drama he's in. Sympathy for the Devil had...
Because we're all little people, that's why. Because I make a difference where I can with the people around me.
And his most recent box set with Benny Summerfield had one that I really enjoyed.
Books are always useful, even if you don't know what for yet.
A sentiment I entirely agree with, but this one is unique in that it has two wham lines. First off, there's...
Have we done the wrong thing, Doctor?
Yes.
No. It's never wrong to overthrow an oppressor.
And then...
Nothing and nobody is beyond redemption, or at least you have to believe as much.
Just two amazing lines that are utterly brilliant. And I've said it before, but there's just something about David Warner's portrayal of the Doctor that just inherently understands the character. It can be tough to have alternate portrayals of such an iconic character, and especially one that lacks the history of the regular Doctor, but David Warner is always amazing, especially here, where the Doctor naturally jumps in to save Skara once again, but he's got an ulterior motive. Not an evil ulterior motive, but an ulterior motive nonetheless. Despite being a time traveler, this Doctor skipped an entire lifetime stuck on Earth, living through the unit days, which absolutely impacted the behavior of the character, and so he's rattling about the universe trying to catch up, even if he technically never left since he went straight from his trial to Hong Kong 97. And I imagine that it's Alistair that caused those feelings, seeing a friend turn old in the blink of an eye. It's not like the Doctor's ever had before. And while it's not explored overtly, there are shades of it hidden within the story. The Doctor's intense need to save the day because of how much he failed to save Earth from. You can even see it in his later entries, where at the end of the universe and all existence as we know it, the Doctor uses his TARDIS to cheat, packing in as much adventure and activity as he can. Sidebar, asking for a friend from the Bernice Summerfield Ruler of the Universe box set is my all-time favorite story featuring Warner. And the fact that we ended on Alistair remaining behind, while sad, makes sense, given that you can almost see his relationship with Nadell being similar to what I presume his relationship with Kate Stewart was in the regular timeline, though I'd guess if Unit didn't pan out, his relationship with Fiona would have gone much the same way, but Kate wouldn't have had that legacy to inherit, just a discredited crackpot father to estrange. And like I said earlier, it's nice that while they didn't have to, they gave Nicholas Courtney a farewell, even if they'd likely had no idea that he'd passed before being able to do the same on screen. It's nice to have Alistair not leave because of death or because of some tragic fate, but just the desire to put down the roots that he was unable to do so on Earth. And it's a nice capstone to the arc started in Sympathy for the Devil, where he had fled to Hong Kong because of his failure in Britain, and likely would have been shoved out after the handover, probably going to Australia as he originally intended, but instead he was given a new chance to be a leader with people who appreciate his knowledge to the strange and unusual. Gillen and Nadell aren't given that much in terms of characterization, since they're not the main characters like the Doctor and Alistair, but it is interesting to see these resistance fighters who immediately defer to the Doctor. They don't fight him on anything, they're willing to get the job done through whatever means the Doctor deems necessary. The Quach are, unfortunately, not very charismatic villains. Given that they have to share the villain role with both Davros and his Daleks, the deck was already stacked against them, but it's stacked even further with the fact that they're just around to be the faceless enemy that Skara fought in their past. A revelation that's not really explored by the Thals other than the knee-jerk reaction when Tulloch exposits about the fact. Like I said before, this story does something very interesting with the Daleks, in making them benevolent and giving them, for lack of a better term, humanity. Usually the Daleks are just around to be conquering space Nazis, and the most interesting Dalek stories, featuring deviations from their usual, is usually involving a single Dalek being cut off from the collective. But this one manages to have the entire tide shift. Was that entirely due to the Doctor not interfering in the past? Probably not, because there are a few differences in how the Daleks act here and there, and bits of the Doctor's history not being a total match for the televised timeline, but it's close enough that it makes for a nice viewpoint. That's really the interesting thing about the Unbound stories. They take the familiar, and even changing one small element completely alters your perception of the characters. Doctor Who likes to pit the Doctor and Davros against each other, and likes to play the "we're not so different, you and I" card with them. And while I think they usually succeed, they really excel with it here. Because this Davros isn't the crazed maniac that we've seen, bent on revenge on the Doctor for messing up his plans. This is a Davros crazed for revenge against the Quach. And for the first time, he and the Doctor are fighting on the same side. The Doctor, despite never having met Davros, still wants to give him a chance to repent, and Davros takes it. He doesn't abandon his creations. He allows them to continue on, even if he can't. Big Finish is always fantastic when it comes to action, regardless of whether it's a straight audiobook read by one actor, a mix of the two, or a full cast audio drama. They always excel with pacing. And this story uses the 2-hour-long episodes to their fullest. A problem with a lot of classic Doctor Who is that with 4 to 6 20-minute stories, depending on length, a lot of those episodes can flounder with issues with either rushed endings or padded out stories. And I don't mean to disrespect the show, but I've seen enough classic Doctor Who to know that you know I'm right. This story doesn't have that problem, and each part, while part of a larger story when combined, are completely standalone in the sense of having their own stories that get resolved within their distinct parts. The first part is liberating Skara from the Daleks, and the second part is getting the Thals and Daleks to join up to defeat the Quach. And it totally works. It can be really hard to turn off, because there are precious few moments of quietness where I can say, okay, here's where we break. I will listen to these on my commute usually, and most of the time I just have to pause wherever it is, because if not, I'll end up not walking into work or into my house, because otherwise I'll just be standing around listening till the ending of the episode. Masters of War has, unfortunately, been the final regular Unbound release, reportedly due to the return of Doctor Who to the screens, and the BBC told them to stop making unofficial Doctors. But it makes a lot of sense that David Warner's portrayal would persist, since it not only was left open-ended, but also presents the most interesting universe to play around in, as Guy Adams and James Goss would do when they brought Bernie Summerfield into it. And even without having the incomparable Sam Kisgart, the audio drama is phenomenal, and I highly recommend it. If you like David Warner's Doctor, it is a must-listen, and if you're a fan of Nick Courtney, you can't miss it. Throw in the other actors, Terry Malloy especially, and the interesting Dalek usage, and you've got a Shore classic that I re-listen to periodically because I just love it so much. Just a shame that this Skara was probably wiped out during the war to end all creation that brought the Doctor and Benny together. If you're looking for a place to start with Big Finish, this ain't it. But if you like alternate takes on the Doctor and other familiar characters, check this one out. Next month, it's the holiday season, but this year we're doing things a tad differently. See you next time. The Doctor and Alistair help the Daleks and Thals join forces, and they go for a full-on Quach assault, learning from one Quach that they capture and interrogate, through whom main means.